Imagine showing up to the cinema for an extended therapy session where Marvel, by way of explosions, fisticuffs, banter, psychoanalyzes its various characters, its ne'er-do-wells that it has gathered for its latest film, Thunderbolts. That's not necessarily a bad thing, considering that over the past 2 years, or at least ever since Avengers Endgame and maybe Spider-Man No Way Home, all we've been getting from Marvel is dross. The literal antithesis of what Marvel had built itself up to be. Thunderbolts, hands down, is the best Marvel movie to come out in the past 2 years. That's not saying much in comparison to the films, that we're comparing it to, but considering that we've had to put up with the likes of Black Widow, Eternals, Doctor Strange into the multiverse, or whatever that was, madness of the multiverse, Captain America: Brave New World, that slew of television series that even Bob Iger has now come to regret. Considering that we've had all of that, this is very firmly a step in the right direction. I'm an avowedly Marvel fan, of course. I mean, I proudly wear it on my sleeve, having been reading them for the past 30 years. Not giving away my age, of course. But I've never kept much stock in, of course, the DC cinematic universe. I mean, that's plain to see, and hopefully, I think before Superman is released, I'll get to rant about James Gunn and how he should not be online. But Marvel, barring, of course, that teething stage where we had one bad movie after another, or at least the kind of superhero films that we got used to in the early 2000s when Avi Arad was the head of Marvel and Sony was involved, and we had Daredevil and all of those terrible movies. Once I think Kevin Feige and the studio itself found its feet, they were just sinking. I mean, it was beautiful to see your sort of characters that you had grown up with, sort of reading them, coming from the page to screen, and then done so well. I think it was Captain America: Winter Soldier onwards, that period, all the way up to Avengers Endgame, that will be, for years to come, be the golden era. And unfortunately, Marvel lost its magic. It lost its way. One can blame, it's been thrown around a lot, superhero fatigue, but I don't think it was that. Because the thing is that it was clear that those grubby Disney execs, Bob Iger, who heralded, in fact, this golden era, he was responsible. Not to say him alone, but sort of under his aegis at least, Kevin Feige was able to do what he did. Of course, then he was shown out. The other Bob came in, and that didn't work out. And then Bob Iger was brought back in. But I think the success went to their heads. They immediately thought that, okay, we've got not one, we've got an oven full of hot potatoes, a baker's dozen, what have you. Let's capitalize on this and make as much money as stinkingly possible. Unfortunately, it's that debate, quality over quantity. It's cliche now, but it just keeps on proving itself, and that's exactly what happened to Marvel. Here they had Avengers Endgame. You end on such a high note. You get rid of, or at least contracts were up, of three of your mainstays, or at least two of your mainstays. Chris Evans and Robert Downey, Captain America and Iron Man are out. And then you decide that, okay, we're going to be sort of overdosing Marvel fans with television and films. They were aiming for, 3 cinematic releases a year, plus at least 3 shows. But it just didn't work out, because the thing is that when you are producing at this level, this level, and again, I hate using this word, I've said this in so many shows before, this level of content, when you are producing that much, something's got to give. And of course, in this case, it was the quality. I don't think Kevin Feige, who is largely responsible for Marvel, the success of Marvel's cinematic universe, was able to pay the necessary attention to each of these properties coming out. And that's why you then had WandaVision was all right, not a bad show. I had expected more from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Moon Knight was kind of all over the place, much like its character. Loki, I think, was one of the better ones, and then Loki season 2 was even better. She-Hulk, which has been shat upon to no end. Forget the storyline, forget, her and Daredevil knocking boots, forget all of that stuff. But I mean, do we all remember the CG, all of that? I mean, it was just dreadful. It was like seeing Shrek come to life. But I mean, that's what happens. I mean, you cannot maintain this pace. You just can't do it. And I'm glad after several failures, because failure is the best teacher here, and it is sort of ruthless, because audiences aren't going to lap it up just because it has that Marvel stamp on it. They're not going to do it. I mean, that's why you then had superhero fatigue. That's why nobody's showing up to your movies. I mean, Captain America Brave New World, which was, again, after the studio had realized the error of their ways. This was their attempt to course correct and take Marvel, or at least bring Marvel back to what it was. Unfortunately, the movie was not that. It was a Winter Soldier retread. I've said this before, and I mean, sort of the review that I did will pop up somewhere here. But what it was essentially is Marvel trying desperately to capture that magic that the Russo brothers, Feige, Chris Evans, all of them brought to something like Winter Soldier. Just try and capture that again. They couldn't do it. But that's where I think the redemption story, Marvel's redemption story, and books will be written on this in the future, I think it should be marked from Thunderbolts onwards. Forget Captain America Brave New World. Let's consider that a part of maybe, the failed Phase 5. But Thunderbolts, that's where I think Marvel's going to start rewriting its story. So Thunderbolts, of course, based on the comic, in which reformed villains are, band together. Not like Suicide Squad, but sort of maybe perhaps in the same vein. I don't want to sort of say they're similar. The comics are completely different, of course. But in this, you have a lot of stringers, a lot of the second-tier characters from Marvel over the years. Bucky, Elena, sort of Black Widow's younger sister, Red Guardian, Taskmaster, U.S. Agent. All of these people are, they're brought together, they band together to confront. And let this be a spoiler. Let this be a spoiler-filled review. So when I say that the movie is a step in the right direction, is that watching this movie, I didn't feel pained. That's what I felt when I watched Captain America Brave New World. I felt that it is Marvel light. But with this, and I think that they were even marketing it that way, they were talking about how sort of this is the first sort of A24 style Marvel movie, and they're really trying to make something different of it. And I do say that. And sort of different is not always a good word, but at least when it comes to this, it is very welcome. The reason why I'm taking that pause is that, yes, I think I will sort of give away that thing. So when they say it's different, it's shot different, there's this really good, and this is where the movie starts off from, this really good hallway fight. Marvel's, hallway fights all the way, from starting from Old Boy, and then, sort of, even go back, sort of Assault on Precinct 13, John Carpenter's, that was a really good hall fight. What's it called? Old Boy's one. Then you have one that, Marvel did as well with Daredevil. There's a really good one here with Elena's character, played by Florence Pugh, pardon me. And I really like how that's shot. It's a top-down shot, and it's lit from a single source. So there are these shadows. And it's really well done. And I think that's where I think that Marvel spirit of experimenting, swinging and maybe missing or not, we don't know, but at least that was something. Like, for example, that risk that Feige took with Guardians of the Galaxy, hiring James Gunn, hiring Chris Pratt, who was off of Parks and Rec, to play Star-Lord, having a talking raccoon, a semi-talking tree, on paper, that's, you're headed for disaster, but it worked. And that's where I think, again, with Thunderbolts, they're trying to make it work again. They're trying to take risks, although I don't think they took enough risks. But again, it is welcome in light of everything that's been done before. Plot-wise. So, again, you have all of these anti-heroes, semi-villainous type characters who, in the meantime, in the meanwhile, while the Avengers have disbanded, so on and so forth, they've been brought back, or at least they're doing the, the character Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays, DeFontaine. They're doing her dirty work. And she's, when the film starts, she's, at the mercy of a congressional hearing. Bucky is a congressman, a very short-lived congressman, but Bucky's a congressman, and in order for her to sort of dodge prison, she's getting all of these people, Taskmaster, U.S. agent, the Ghost from Ant-Man 2, and Elena to sort of clean up and sort of make everything squeaky clean. But of course, that cleanup also means that she has to get rid of these people. And that's where this film really kicks off. And I think that's where the movie takes its first stumble. And this is really curious why they did this. Taskmaster, who's been gender swapped in this movie, all the way back from Black Widow, played by Olga Krylenko. We have this fight scene, and one would imagine, because she's on the poster there, for everyone to see. And spoiler, within I think the first 5 minutes of that fight, she's shot dead. I know that there's, I think, a script version out there in which she was like sort of in the rest of this movie and she played a part. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about having her being offed so quickly in this movie. I think she could have added something to the film. And considering that she's shot by a character and then you're sort of somehow or the other meant to empathize with these characters later on, because these guys have been doing dirty work. They've been killing people. Not because, not for any righteous reasons. Like, for example, Hawkeye during Endgame. They've just been killing them because they don't have anything else. They don't know any better. So that I found strange because, Marvel is still trying to keep it sort of, keep that Marvel banter, that sort of like, team dynamic going. And that's where I think this team, one of the positives of this, it really does work, because with Eternals, it fell completely flat. Even though you had a star-studded cast, it just didn't work. There was no chemistry amongst any of them. But here it does. It doesn't rise to that Avengers level of team dynamic or chemistry. But at least with these people, I think, there's an inkling, there's a hint of, there's a promise of seeing a Thunderbolts 2 where, the chemistry that is developed between these people gets to further, we get to further explore it. I would really like to, I look forward to that. But killing off Taskmaster so soon in the film, I think that was a bit of a misstep. But let's not parse the script itself. Let's move on. Of course, during that whole scene where they're in that vault, either trying to kill one another, but then realizing that they've been set up, they stumble upon Sentry, Marvel's gag, if you will, all the way back, almost 20 years now, where, in the comics, they said that this was one of the very first, even I think before Spider-Man, one of the first superheroes that Stan Lee came up with. Of course, that was all a hoax, but it was a nice sort of like, gimmick to set up that character. So we have that played by Lewis Pullman. It was supposed to star Stephen Yeun, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think that didn't really come through. So Lewis Pullman stepped in. He does a pretty good job. They stumble upon Sentry. Then, DeFontaine's, she then says, they had assumed that the Sentry program had ended. Now that it hasn't, she then brings him back and wants to sort of be, her, the leader of her new super team, or at least have him be her get out of jail free card. And that's where the story then shifts from these, sort of ne'er-do-wells, these screw-up superheroes, sort of then trying to save Sentry. And it took me back to Ang Lee's Incredible Hulk, where it's not your typical superhero movie. I would say the last half, honestly, I would say the last 20 minutes, the finale of the movie is just straight up sort of psychoanalysis. It's not sort of Neon Genesis, Evangelion sort of psychoanalysis, but this is, sort of Marvel's way of dealing with people's issues. And in this case, in Sentry's case, it's sort of abuse and addiction, so on and so forth. And you have them going into his subconscious, and sort of literally fighting their way through, which was, again, I don't know if that's the Jungian model or the Freudian model of dealing with your demons, but that's definitely Marvel's way of doing it. I wonder if that was the movie that I wanted from Thunderbolts. Did I want a movie? Because the thing is, honestly, when you do watch it, it doesn't come off as your typical Marvel film. Going that route, I think, was I wouldn't say courageous of them, but it was definitely taking a risk. It's not the kind of payoff. You don't get that at the end of this movie. There's not like this big blowout, like sort of in Avengers 1, where you have, the Battle of New York. There's nothing like that. Of course, New York does get, I don't even know how to, shaded out of existence. I don't know. But you don't get that in this movie. You get something else. And I think as a peripheral movie, maybe in service to the larger films that we're expecting, Fantastic Four, Avengers Doomsday, this would be, I think, a nice footnote sort of to kick off, what is this now, phase 5, phase 6? Yeah, I'm not going to fault it too much. I would perhaps give this movie like a C+, or a B-. But I think those are really, it's a good thing. Because the thing is that every other Marvel movie has been a straight up D. But this is a Marvel that's at least trying. There's good banter, there are good jokes. Action isn't as good as when you'd see the Avengers in action. I think there was a lot more that I wanted from that side. Sentry's character, played by Lewis Pullman, that was pretty good. And when he turns into the Void character, I really like the character design where he's just jet black, and there's these pinpoints, his eyes. That's very creepy. And the way that he sort of snuffs people out of existence, not bad at all. I think Red Guardian, Frank Harbor, yeah. A little over the top, too over the top. I don't know. I think that maybe we need to, that they need to play that down a bit. Sebastian Stan as Bucky, I think he needed more. I don't think there was enough of him. Because Sebastian Stan's a pretty good actor. I don't know why that guy isn't getting more from Marvel. I mean, in Brave New World, he was barely there for it was a cameo appearance. This was meant to be a vehicle for him, but he's not in this as much as I would have liked him to be. U.S. Agent, that guy was good. He's a good actor, Kurt Russell's son. I like him, and he does a pretty good job playing that role. Yes, there are two end credit scenes. Stick around for both of them, especially the last one. That one's good. Let's wrap this one up by saying this is hopefully Marvel turning over a new page and stepping in the right direction.